everyone, Chanel here. So we are on day 48 of our 4-month Bible reading plan. Today we're looking at 2 Kings chapters 17 through 23 and Acts chapters 6 and 7. So here are our chapter summaries, and I'll be back in a little bit with thoughts and key takeaways. Hey everyone, Chanel here. So this will be a pretty short video. Actually, as I was reading through the readings for today, there's one thing that really kind of stood out to me, and it's funny because my mother and I, we've touched on this between the two of us previously, and that is the fact that pretty much one of the most wicked kings had one of the longest rules. Manasseh, or Manasseh, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. We read about him in 2 Kings chapter 21. Of all the kings, whether it's Israel or Judah, of all the kings that reigned, Manasseh's reign was actually the longest. According to the Bible, his reign was about 56 years. And I'm going to actually, I created a chart with the list of kings, all the kings from Israel and all the kings of Judah. I listed the king. I listed the duration of their reign, how many years they reigned. I listed whether or not they were good or evil. And I listed whether or not the prophets that prophesied during their reign. So I'm going to put that PDF as a link in the description. So I think it helps to, there's so many kings going back and forth, and not just Israel and Judah, but then it starts bringing in talks about the king of Assyria and Edom and just different kings all over the place. And they're all kind of going back and forth and interacting. So it can get kind of confusing which king was doing what and who was evil and who was good. And so, yeah, I made a chart that I think will be helpful. But yeah, of all the kings that reigned, Manasseh's reign was the longest, almost 56 years. And I said to my mom, I said, it's funny that why did God allow the most wicked king to reign the longest? It's really interesting. Manasseh, there were many, many wicked kings. So it's hard. It's kind of a toss up. But when I read either Kings or Chronicles, it really sounds like Manasseh took it to another level. He was doing child sacrifice, it sounds like. It said he was doing above the abominations of even the heathen nations, the foreign nations. It sounds like he was doing even worse than what they were doing. It kind of really sounds like Manasseh took the satanic worship and the abominations to a whole new level. And yet, God allowed him to reign the longest. And I was fascinated by that. And I was like, my mom and I were talking, and it's like, why does God sometimes allow wickedness to continue, even for extended periods of time? Sometimes it just feels like it just goes on and on and on. And you're like, oh my gosh, why is this happening for so long? Why doesn't God just do something? Why doesn't he just stop it? And, I don't think that there's a simple one-word answer for every situation. I think that we can look at different situations and God's reasoning for allowing certain things. It'll vary, and it'll be different depending, I think, on the situation. But I think there are a few other scriptures that can give us a little bit of insight to maybe what's going on. If we look at Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11, it says something interesting. It says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of times people feel that, because there's so much wickedness going on and God isn't, sending down bolts of lightning immediately. There's almost this idea that, well, God must be okay with it because, he's not really doing anything about it. And we see that mindset in Psalm 50. If we go to Psalm 50, it actually says something really interesting. In the early parts of the Psalm, it's talking about all of the wicked things that these people are doing. It says in verse 17, thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee. When thou, 18, verse 18, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. Like this person's just, doing wicked and even helping others that are doing evil and wicked. And then it says something really interesting in verse 21. It says, these things hast thou done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself. But I will reprove thee and set them in order before thine eyes. So it's pretty much saying a lot of people, and we can get into the culture of today, a lot of sexual immorality and wickedness goes on, and people say that, well, God loves he supports and loves everything and everybody. And it's kind of like when you rebuke sin, people will, say that you're being hateful and evil and judgy. And it's because God is not raining down fire like he did in Sodom and Gomorrah. People just assume that God is kind of okay with everything. He's allowing things for a time, but that doesn't mean that judgment won't eventually fall. There's something really interesting. If we go back to Genesis chapter 15, God is talking to Abram, and he's telling Abram what his descendants will go through. Genesis chapter 15, starting in verse 13. And he, talking about God, said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. And they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And that's kind of an interesting saying, phrase, what God means by that. The iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So he kind of allows, even if you think about it, what he's saying, the children of Israel are going to be the servants of this other nation. They're going to be forced to serve them. This other nation is going to rule over them. So if you think about it, they will be successful. This other nation will be successful in their domination and their ruling over of the children of Israel. They're going to succeed in what they're doing. And it says for 400 years. That is a long time. So it's like God's going to allow that to happen for 400 years. And he said, but they will eventually, that nation I will judge, and the children of Israel will come out with great substance. But he says the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So yeah, we don't quite always understand God's timing and his purpose, or why he kind of allows evil to reign for certain periods of time. We flip over to the book of Acts, and Stephen is stoned, so it's like God allowed the wicked people who, executed him. They were successful in what they did. They successfully executed Stephen. So yeah, it's just, I'm not an apologist, but yeah, I think it's one of those things that, we kind of struggle with. And I guess the word that kept coming to my heart and mind was trust. And I know that's a hard, when you're going through something, when you're in a difficult situation, and maybe someone is tormenting you or harassing you or giving you a hard time. I'm actually kind of in a situation right now. My mom and I, we're kind of in a stressful situation, and there are people that are giving us a hard time, and it would be great. We've asked God to remove them from our lives, not to delete them or unalive them. That's not what we prayed for. We just prayed for them to be removed from the situation so that they're no longer in our circle, so that we no longer have to interact with them. Not forgot to take them off the planet. But yeah, God is, he hasn't done it yet. And he's been moving kind of slowly, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you got to deal with the situation day in and day out. The situation isn't going away, and you just have to kind of suck it up and bite the bullet and feel the stress sometimes. But yeah, it's It's one of those things that I don't fully understand. I think that maybe as we go through the scriptures, we'll begin to understand it a little bit better. But yeah, God's timing. God's timing is his timing. Even my mom and I talk all the time. Noah, the flood. God could have just made the water recede. Like he could have just snapped his fingers and poof, the water could have receded immediately. But God allowed the water to recede slowly. Meanwhile, they're stuck in the ark and they're aging and time is going by and it's like, okay, really, Lord, can you make this go a little bit faster? But he didn't. And so yeah, it's just I don't know. I think that trust is the only answer that I can give at this moment. Trusting God and loving God while you're waiting. And definitely tricky and hard, and you pray for grace to do it. But the answer will eventually come and change will eventually come. So that's all I have for now. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.